This is Back to Back.
Yo, what's up, back-to-backers? This is Willy Joy. Welcome to the show. This is Back to Back. This is my podcast. I hope everybody out there is doing well. So happy to be here with you guys. I am sitting in my hot-ass studio. It is just too hot. Something is not right with the air conditioning, but it's all good. I am truly earning the title of hottest DJ in the game, and I am really excited to bring this episode to you guys. My guests on the show today are Ryan Jaso and Chris White, and they are the force behind the legendary Control Party in Los Angeles. They're going on 10 years. That's a crazy lifespan for a party. And they've had so many incredible nights, launched the careers of so many of your favorite artists, and now they've turned Control into a fully fledged media company, Control Forever, and we're going to tell you all about it in just a minute. Let's run through the business really quick. As always, I want to make sure everybody out there is following the Back to Bangers Spotify playlist. This is the playlist that I update every single week with all the brand new music for myself, my guests, and all the music that we discuss here at Back to Back. So if you're listening, you hear us mention a song that you don't know, you hear us mentioning an old favorite that you'd love to hear, all you have to do is go to that playlist. People really seem to dig it, and I'm having a lot of fun making it. All of these links are in the description of this episode. So go check that out, and also don't forget to subscribe to this show on whatever platform you're listening to. We love seeing those numbers go up. It really, truly does help us, as does leaving us a rating and a review on iTunes. People ask me from time to time how they can support, how they can get involved. The best way, this is true, is just to tell a friend. Spread the word. We don't do advertising here at Back to Back. The only way we grow is through listeners like yourself, through the community of people who support us. And so if you know somebody who would like this show, just let them know. Send them a link. Tell them to check it out. That's the best way to get involved, and that's the shit we love to see. And I really love the community surrounding this show. I love to talk to everybody out there. Don't forget, you can always hit me up. backtobackpod@gmail.com is the email address. Or you can hit me up at Willy Joy or at backtobackpod on all social media. A lot of times people seem kind of surprised that I'm really responsive, that I actually do talk to people who write in. But it's why I keep saying it, man. I'm here for you the same way I know everybody out there is here for me. So hit me up. Let's chat. Let's do it. So for this conversation with Ryan and Chris from Control Forever, we've been trying to set this one up for a while. It was actually pretty tough to align all of our schedules. I'm always running around. They're busy guys. They're doing a million different things. But finally, I got over to their office. We made it happen. And I'm really excited because their history in dance music, in electronic music, is so heavy. They've been responsible for some really big moments that a lot of people would not really know. It was just awesome to get them on tape, get them on the record. You know, from very humble beginnings, they managed to run one of the biggest, longest-running club nights in Los Angeles dance music history ever. They're responsible for the Los Angeles debuts of people like DJ Snake, Rusko, a seminal Skrillex show that has a crazy story behind it. You'll hear that in a second. And look, just every single week for the past 10 years, they've been upping the bar in Los Angeles. And for a long time, Los Angeles has been where the rest of the country's been looking. So they're really at the heart of everything. And they're not only promoters, they've turned Control into a full-fledged media company. ControlForever.com is where you need to go to check everything out. They're doing journalism, they're doing podcasts, they're doing shows, merchandise, design. It's crazy. They're doing it all, drawing on their backgrounds, not only as promoters, but as artists. You know, Chris was a touring DJ for many, many years. Ryan was an artist manager. These guys have played many roles in the industry, and you can just tell they're speaking with some authority here. I think you're going to learn a lot. I think you're really going to love this conversation. One quick note that I do want to say is that while we were recording, the AC system in their office was kind of going crazy, just haywire. And you're going to hear some background hum, some noise. I tried to clean it up as best I could, but some of it is still there. I wanted to acknowledge that. I don't think it ruins the recording in any way. But, if you hear that hum, that's what it is. This conversation was just too good, man. I had to put it out anyway. So check it out. This is me and Ryan and Chris from Control Forever. Back to back. Let's go. Well, usually I just jump in, but because there's two of you guys, just very briefly go ahead and introduce yourselves so the listeners know whose voice they're hearing.
So the really awesome, sexually attractive voice is mine. That's Ryan Jaso.
And the not sexually attractive, boring, scientific voice is mine, Chris White.
Use the word calculated. Calculated's better. It works.
Yeah.
I like that you said scientific, though, because no one says they have a scientific voice.
Yeah.
People
I just
are
was
like,
trying to
I
think
have a
of
scientific mind.
what's a better way to say boring. I think that's what
Nerdy?
I was thinking in my
I think
head.
you can say nerdy.
Well, when you say scientific, I think like Bill Nye has a great scientific voice.
That's true. That's true.
Actually, yeah, you're totally right.
Even though I found out he's not a real scientist,
Yeah, someone else was telling me
that
that.
kind of tortured my soul.
He's like, what? So what? He's just like a TV host, basically, who likes science.
He's a science enthusiast.
Yeah. Okay. A scienceologist.
Well, in his defense, he's always called himself the science guy.
Yeah.
He's never said I'm a scientist.
You're right.
He
You
said
know
I'm
what?
the science guy.
Fuck, you're right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bill Nye.
He's not on this show.
I never should have doubted
Anybody
you.
listening?
I fancy myself kind of a brain surgery guy.
No, don't let this guy operate on
It doesn't
your brain.
work? Okay.
No, absolutely not. It's the last thing you should be doing.
Oh my God. But I was actually thinking about you guys the other day. It's about a week ago, I think. It was very random, but Keys and Crates sent out this tweet I just randomly saw in my feed that said basically, we're about 10 years into our career and we just decided to throw everything, like toss everything against the wall again and sort of reinvent ourselves. And it's really weird and we don't know what we're doing and it's very exciting again. And I thought of you guys because you're coming up about 10 years of Control. Is that right?
December will be 10 years. December 4th is technically our 10-year anniversary. December 4th, 2008.
That's crazy, man.
Felix Cartel was the first show we ever did, and he's still doing it. So,
Really?
Yeah.
That was the first official Control show?
Yeah, it was the first Control show.
Man. And was it always at Avalon, even back then?
Yeah. Control was always at Avalon. We obviously branched out to San Francisco more recently, but we started Control at Avalon.
Yeah. And it's just an interesting time, man, because 10 years, I mean, that's a huge amount of time. I assume that sounds crazy to you to say 10 years at this point.
In nightlife, I think 1 year it's like 20 in dog years, right? It's like, to last 10 years in Hollywood nightlife it's kind of unheard of.
I was saying this to him the other day. I said, this is the longest I've done any one thing in my life, period. I haven't had a relationship that long. I haven't had a marriage last that long. I haven't had kids that long. I haven't had anything in my life last as long as Control and our business relationships lasted, which is pretty crazy to say because we were actually throwing events in Orange County and at this little tiny bar before that. So really we've been throwing events for 12 years now, probably is more safe to say.
Yeah, and what's funny, little bonus to that story is that the very first place that we were throwing events in Orange County was called Avalon, but it was the small Avalon that was across the street from Detroit Bar. That's when I started throwing an event there, and the capacity was 30 people.
Huh.
It was about the size of this room.
Yeah.
Man.
Like if you had more than 30 people there, it was uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was kind of like, dude, we're over capacity.
Yeah.
Get these guys out of here. Get rid of the dudes.
Everybody go smoke.
Yeah. But dude, if it's actually 30 people, that sounds amazing. Because if you get anything under 100, I will almost automatically love that venue. Like I love those tiny spaces.
Yeah, it was kind of like a speakeasy. And then it was owned by a guy who used to be in a punk band, I think. He passed away recently.
Passed away, yeah.
But it was a really cool venue. And then we graduated and moved across the street and started doing stuff at what was Detroit Bar. I think it's called Wayfair now, but started doing, we did Steve Aoki there. We had done Africa Bambaataa there. We did Data Rock and a bunch of other indie rock stuff. It was pretty cool.
And this is mid-2000s?
This is probably 2006.
Okay.
I want to say.
And are you guys from Orange County? Is that?
I am.
You are.
You are from. You're a.
Yeah. So
What are you?
I bounced all around. I lived in California, in Southern California, till I was 10. Then I lived in Louisiana till I was 14. I did high school in Pennsylvania. Then I came back to Southern California for college. But I linked up with Jaso. I think I was 22 or 23, and my DJ chops and promotion education came from Orange County. That's where it started.
Sure. I mean, what do you guys remember about when you were just kids, like before you were throwing shows? You know, what was going on around you musically? What kind of shows were you going to? What was that experience like?
Wow. So, the first show I ever went to was Warped Tour 1996.
Nice.
At the Irvine Meadows Amphitheater, which is no longer there. I think Rancid and Bad Religion headlined it.
That's a great headline.
I was super into punk music at the time, and I went with my cousin. I remember, I don't know why or how my parents let me go to that by myself without a parent supervisor. Thinking back on it, I was probably 12 years old or 13 years old at the time. And I was fascinated with rock music. I was super into rock and metal, and I think that's where him and I really kind of aligned. So we really liked that music, and you can kind of see that in the flyer design and the stuff that we do. And I think dance music has a very punk rock feel to it. There's a very metal or punk kind of, there's always an underground vibe to it.
100%.
And I think both of us really were attracted to the idea of something new and unique. And it was weird to listen to Pantera and then put on a Klaxons remix for sure as I was transitioning into dance music. But to have that in your iPod at the time, playlist, it was definitely, it was a very eclectic iPod, I think I had.
But I mean, that's for so many of us in that scene, I think we all had that experience, right? Is just we all connected dots to different kinds of music, different sounds that maybe not everyone else connected. And then we kind of found our people over time, right?
Yeah. I think, him and I were both, I think Justice was our stuff.
Yeah.
Like, that was it. Like, that was like...
That was the bridge to connect everything.
It was a total bridge, because it was punk. It was punk in a different setting, in a format. Like, I was probably a little too young to really experience that movement firsthand, the punk music and metal. But I always gravitated towards that music. So when we heard Justice and Mastercraft and a lot of the electro, that era, I think we both really gravitated towards it because of that reason.
Yeah, and so for me, it was I grew up on hip hop, and so going to high school in Pennsylvania, being on the East Coast, everything was coming down from New York. So we were just cutting class, going to New York City, buying bootleg DJ Clue mixtapes, and everything was, Wu-Tang and Biggie. And exactly like Jaso said, I think once I heard, I think for me it was a lot of the indie stuff that was happening in electronic music, like Scissor Sisters and Milo. That started, I was just curious about what was happening, Fisher Spooner.
Sure.
And then that led me to Justice and Mastercraft and Boys Noise and Crookers. And I would just see this dude at these shows. So I started going to like early Chromeo shows or like MIA or Justice, and I would just see Jaso out. Like he was just at all of like the shows that I was at.
And what age is this about?
I'm probably 24.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was probably 24, 25, I want to say.
Yep. Yeah. And I think it was just, there was this thing happening in LA at that time where I had started DJing, and I was playing at a club called La Disco that this guy Keith Wilson was doing. He also did a party called Moscow that was at Bordner's, and those were like the electro clash and like scene kid parties in LA. And I was doing that kind of part of the time. The other part of the time I was doing Hollywood gigs for SBE and just playing like, top 40 type music.
Right.
And I think you had come to La Disco one of the nights, and you had had a meeting with the guys over at Vice, and I think they gave you like an unreleased Justice CD. And when you came to La Disco, you're like, hey, I know you like Justice. I have the album like pre-released. Do you want this? And I was like, yo, that's a homie move right there. Yeah, I was like, I get it early. And
it was like 3 weeks before it came out, I think.
Yeah.
Because I had been in New York the month before, and I knew all the Vice guys before, because I used to work for a clothing line to back it up. And that was what I was doing. I would move to LA. I was trying to get into marketing. I was like really just trying to meet people, because I was the marketing director for this streetwear line called Cardboard Robot at the time.
Oh, really? Man, I used to love Cardboard Robot.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
So I was doing the sales and the marketing, and it was a startup, so wore many hats. So I knew the Vice guys because we used to advertise in Vice. Okay. So when I would go to New York, I would hang with them, and I remember he was like, "Hey, do you want some shit before you leave?" And I was like, "Yeah, what do you got?" And he was like, and that the Cross was released on Vice Records when they had the label still.
Right.
And he just gave me a stack of stuff. I'm like, "Can I get an extra one of those? My buddy's gonna like this." I remember he was like, "Did you really just give this to me before it's out?"
Not really. That was like the beginning of our friendship. I thought it was just like, he didn't really know me all that well. It's like, we were buddies, but like, we weren't super close, but that he had gone out of his way to, grab me something and then come to the event where I was playing and, drop off the music.
And Chris, for you at that time, was DJing something you were trying to pursue as a career? Like, where were you at in life at that point?
Yeah, it's a great question. So basically, I moved to California to study film. I was 16 units shy of my BA, and I dropped out because I had found DJing. And I was like, why am I going to waste another semester when I found the thing that I want to do with my life? I was waiting tables and DJing and gigging anywhere and everywhere I could. Yep. I was definitely the guy that would hear that some dude might be sick at the club, so I would show up with my records, and if he didn't show up, maybe I was there.
Right. Did that ever work?
It did work a couple times, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it did work. And I think people also knew that I was kind of like the go-to guy that if somebody did get sick, you could hit Chris and he would be there.
You were solid.
Yeah, and I would show up and I would play.
For the young bucks too, commitment is not bringing your USB to the club hoping it's going to happen. Commitment is bringing your crates of records.
Multiple crates.
That is like a big, big, heavy burden of a gamble that you took.
Yeah. And Willy, but there's something about DJing that the first time that because I had dabbled when I was really young in high school, but when I played my first gig with my 1200s in front of 10 people, I was like, this is it.
Right.
I knew at that moment that everything about this, everything about the culture, everything about the art and sharing art and music with people, I loved it. I fell in love immediately.
Yeah, you know what it is? I've sort of been trying to figure this out over the whole time I've been doing the show, and I'm getting closer. For me, what I think it was originally, and what it kind of still is it's been the best way that I can show people what it's like to be in my brain. It's a way to feel really known for me, as opposed to trying to talk to people, which I usually find very awkward and unpleasant. I can just go and DJ, and I feel like people understand much more than just a service conversation.
Yeah, I can tell you, I have my own podcast within our network, the Control Forever Network, and I can tell you,
which is a great podcast.
This is the first time I've ever been on the front lines, putting myself out there as a creative. I've always been a manager or the promoter or the guy behind the scenes. Yeah. And man, I can tell you, it's a crazy thing to put yourself out there, because you're out there for everyone to pick you apart or compliment you, or for good and bad. And it's kind of trying to figure that out. So it's actually interesting, because now that he's kind of segued into this part of his career, I think I finally fully appreciate what it is that him and you guys do on a daily basis by putting yourself out there with your music and kind of just putting yourself on a platter, letting people slice you to pieces or give you love, whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's difficult because, and Chris, I'm sure you know this too, it's like if you show everything, then you feel very vulnerable. But if you don't show everything, then probably the art isn't going to be as good, or whatever it is, the final product isn't going to be as good. I think it's the same for podcasting. Like there's sometimes where someone will say something and I'll have an opinion. I'm like, I probably shouldn't say that. But then if I don't, the podcast is less interesting to listen to and less authentic. I don't know.
Well, and I think also, to Jaso's point, that it's funny for me that now that I am a little bit more behind the scenes with the new ventures and projects that we have, I fully respect what he used to do, and that it's a very thankless gig to be a music manager or to be a promoter, that you help someone go from making $200 a show to, being a multimillionaire, and along the way, there may not be that many thank yous. And
I have always said that to me, promoting seemed like the hardest, most stressful job that you could pick out of any of the jobs, and also the one where you just get yelled at the most, like the least thankful. I don't know. Do you feel like that?
I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can see how people think that. I will say there were times, when we first started Control, when we first really started doing it, he was our resident DJ. He played almost every single Friday. And I was kind of our de facto stage manager, promoter, head of promotions / driver. And I didn't have to drive, but I really, really wanted to drive. And I made it a point to pick the artists up from the airport myself and have a conversation with them and build that rapport and be able to connect with them.
Yeah.
And so when they saw me at the club, if there wasn't that connection initially, it was like, yo man, can you get me a bottle? And I was like, no, that's not me.
Yeah.
I will get that for you 100%. But if I built some sort of relationship first, and so when he would get to the club later, I'd be like, this is my partner Chris, so he didn't get the can you get my shit type of vibe.
Right.
And
exactly.
we made it a point to really make sure we were going above and beyond and doing things different. I think it can be thought of as thankless sometimes, and we often feel that way. I know he can attest to that. But when you do a good show and everything clicks and it's crazy, and you got 1,700, 2,000 people bursting at the seams in the room, and it's crazy and it's hectic and it's stressful. But when it's over, it's like, God damn, we made that from nothing.
Yeah.
And it's not just to say we did. It was a full-blown collaboration with the artist, the manager, the agent, all of our promotions, the entire squad running in the same direction.
Right.
That feeling is really special.
When we were just talking about how with DJing, you're kind of sharing these ideas or these moments with people. But now that you say that, that's that idea to the nth degree. Not only are you providing this music, you're providing everything, the space, the other people, everything about it. And you're right. I think artists appreciate promoters for the most part, good promoters. But yeah, I don't know. I used to, when I was living in Chicago a long time ago, I threw a monthly party for 4 years or so. And I was a garbage promoter. I was terrible. Never really enjoyed it, but it did provide a lot of the relationships that would be the foundation of what I went on to do later in my career. So it's, I don't know,
there's
man.
You gotta really, it's really good that you did that though, right? Because I always tell him, it's so awesome that I was at one point managing artist, also a promoter. I could see both sides. So I could see the artist perspective on something, and I could see what the promoter was feeling. So I feel like we always did a good job when he was playing shows. We put whatever we could into promoting and pushing that show and making it go, and really could empathize with that promoter, because we were ourselves and we didn't want to do anything where the promoter was going to lose his hat. And really, if you think about it, I used to tell my artists all the time, you got to make this thing work. And if it doesn't, like, it's good to give a fee reduction now and then because the promoter feels good about it and he'll try to book you again. Because what good does it do anyone's career if you burn someone out and then everyone's unhappy? You played a shitty show, it was dead. You took all the promoter's money. They're gonna talk. Like, I'll tell you, like, straight up, if you're a dick, or if you didn't promote very well, or if you like just put zero effort into your show, like, I'm definitely, if someone asks me, I'm not gonna run around town talking crap, but if someone asks me, I'm gonna be like, I wouldn't book it again, you know? So it needs to be like the ecosystem of promoter, agent, manager, artist. That whole thing needs to be synergistic. If not, it doesn't work.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting, I'm skipping around a little bit. How do you deal with that in terms of, everyone has their own aims, right? And I think the industry can be very competitive. Agents are trying to get top dollar for their acts. Promoters are trying to pay as little as is possible for their shows. Artists are somewhere in the middle, just wanting to be treated well and respected and all of that. I mean, is it a matter of just finding the right people and forging those relationships? Or is it more, how do you approach kind of that back and forth game,
I think that it's probably best framed this way, that it needs to be a win for all parties. And there are situations where it will be a win for everyone. And it's just finding what that is. So I've never looked at what we do. It's like there is negotiation involved, but we know that, at certain moments in an artist's career that, with our audience, it will probably draw this many tickets. So this is what makes sense for us. And, this is what works on the control side. But I don't know, I'd have to talk with every artist that we've ever booked, but I don't think that people leave the control show at least feeling like, I should have gotten paid more for that. Like, we try to be really fair. Something that we did that was a little different too is that in the beginning, a lot of times, and I DJ'd for free for a long time. I'm sure you DJ'd for free.
100%.
We never had people DJ for free on purpose because we wanted to make sure that if you showed up and you played a set, you were paid for that set. And I feel like just the way that Jaso and I have approached Control the Party is that being fair to agents and artists and managers, and we've always looked at it as it's not like it is a business, but for us it's so much more about moving the culture. And like, it just needs to be profitable so that all the different people involved, that we can keep doing it. But that's not why we do it. We do it because like we both love the fact of having this house where if we hear something on Spotify or SoundCloud and we think that thing's dope, we have a house where we can say, hey, we've got 2,000 people coming to this thing. You should support because your stuff's rad. And we did that with so many people over the years that like it just became this thing where like Control was like as you were coming up, it was just a great place to kind of either have your start out moment or have your breakout moment where this happens. So the money side of it, I just feel like maybe not that agents were like friendlier with us, but that like I think it was because we weren't trying to squeeze every dollar out of it.
You got a reputation for being,
so I think it was just,
members of the community.
It's never easy. I just think it was different, I think, for us because of just our reputation, I guess, in the scene. You were friends with so many agents that didn't help. That didn't hurt.
Yeah. I mean, was that the idea when you started Control in the first place? Like, obviously, you said you had been throwing shows in Orange County and working together prior to Control, but when you started that, what was the initial thought there, or the early goals with it? I guess
it's so funny. So
just keep doing it.
Yeah,
be open next week.
Yeah, I was gonna say like most of the time it was like, first of all, we'd both be lying if we sat up here and told you like we thought it was going to be. We'd still be talking about this today as a current situation and not a past one. That being said, for us, it was like what he just said is like we were just stoked to be open that next week. We were excited to do it all over again. And what's crazy about a weekly is it's kind of, I always make the sports analogy. It's like football. It's like, cool, man, you won. Enjoy a day off, get back to work the day after that because you got to go back to work and promote the next one. And really, we don't even get to take the next day off. It's Saturday. There better be the flyer up for the next week, and we better be pushing. But yeah, that being said, it was like, for us, I think our goals in the beginning were really, he wanted to DJ and I kind of was managing him. And so I started managing other clients, and we really didn't put a ton of effort into trying to build the Control brand right away. Outside of LA, we were like, let's just crush LA. And we were able to build our other businesses and platforms off of what we had established with Control.
So like he could scout for his talent management company. He could scout people that were coming through Control.
Right.
And then I always felt like I started in the era of having a big residency. Like if you had a big DJ residency in Vegas, you could tour all over the world.
Right.
So having a residency at the Avalon in Hollywood, that was great for my resume. This was before the era of you had to be a producer.
Right.
You could just be a DJ. So that was my thinking in the beginning of like, this is great for both of us. And, I just love this as a residency idea and as a venue. And then it kind of just took off.
What were those early shows like, the early Control nights? Like, was it a hit right away?
No, slow.
No, we were lucky in the beginning because we came to the venue owners with a pretty obscure idea to do something like this, because you got to remember, this is 2008, 2009. We're booking A-Track and Felix Cartel and this like heavy, crunchy electro and this really like heavy sound. And the Saturdays is Steve Angelo, it's Sebastian Ingrosso, it's Sasha and Digweed. It's very progressive house, strong, and it's crushing. It's one of the biggest nights going. Every weekend is a DJ Mag Top 100 producer.
And it's fair to say that you guys were a little early on the electro sound, right? Like it wasn't a really poppin' thing yet.
It was still very, very much underground. It was Dim Mak Tuesdays, it was Banana Split Sundays, it was us, and then there was a few of the raves happening, obviously. But for us, it was, it was really... I'm surprised we even made it. We were lucky that the venue and the venue owner understood what we were trying to do, was willing to take the L's as long as, there was a win on the horizon, or like there was a long-term plan for what we were trying to do. And
how did you convince him? What did he see in you at the time? Because Avalon's a big venue to just hand to somebody.
So really how it went is that, so the Friday nights at Avalon before we started were a hip-hop night run by Power 106. The West Coast hip hop station. Then it turned into a promotion called OMG, where they were booking acts like Flostradamus and LMFAO and Katy Perry before they had blown up.
Right.
Like they just got their label deal and they needed to have a showcase somewhere. The nights weren't doing very well, so Jaso and I went to the venue and said, "Hey, I was DJing there and I love DJing there. I want to keep playing there." And I'm like, if you want to put people in the room, you should book something the kids want to see. And like now hearing what I said, it sounds really arrogant and but it really was like a very matter of fact. And I just remember the venue owner was kind of laughs and says like, "Well, who's that then, tough guy?" And that's where we started with the idea of let us book it or at least consult on like what the booking should be. And if you don't like it after a month, then we don't have to do it anymore. But I'm DJing these like other clubs like La Disco in Moscow. I see what's happening in the electro movement. I think that there's a fan base there, and let's try to make this thing work. But let's just try it for a month. And so then we did like a month trial, and our early partners were Gary Richards, Destructo, who is now Lifestyle, but had the Hard Festival.
Right. What was his role at the time?
So he was the other resident DJ. So it was Mr. White and Destructo, and he was because he was doing the early Hard festivals. The idea is that we could share some talent. So some stuff that he was having on the big show, we could have do some club shows.
Sure.
And then our third partner was this guy Matt Goldman, who was also throwing a party called Dance Right in downtown with Shepherd Ferry. And he had another one at Jimmy's Lounge called PYT. He was one of the lead designers for Obey in the early days. So he actually is the one that came up with the format that you see on the Control flyers.
Okay.
And also the Control font. So the fact that it kind of looks like a Polaroid.
Yeah.
That was Matt's design.
That's a strong team to start, like, to see where everyone has gone since then.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild, man. I mean, and Gary Destructo is another fascinating person to me because obviously his history in Los Angeles is just crazy. His history in the music business is pretty wild. But the more I talk to him, the more I get to know him, the more you learn about him. He's a really collaborative guy. You know, I feel like, and hearing this story too, it's like he's been involved in so much more than I think people realize behind the scenes just over the years. What was he like back then? Same old?
Yeah, he was great, man. I think what was cool is that we would switch off. Like sometimes I would play the opening slot, sometimes he would play. And this was back in the era where like set times were like a little bit more chill. Like it was kind of like when you were done. Like, you good? You got that? Okay, cool. I'll step in.
Right.
But he was great. I think even then, though, what was rad is that he had a sound that he was trying to push that was like the Destructo sound, and it was very different than a lot of stuff that was out there. I kind of always looked at Control was so different every week that I'm like, okay, this week I'm going to play more of a disco set because we've got, a disco headliner, or I'm going to play a heavier set because we've, got Bloody Beetroots or, whatever. So, but he was great, man. He was a great partner, and I think that Jaso and I definitely learned a lot from him in those early days of like what to book and what not to book.
Funny story, full circle, we're doing his new brand, AMF. We're doing the actual pre-party with him next month.
There you go.
We just announced it today, actually. Probably when this podcast comes out, it'll be announced. So.
Perfect, man. Yeah.
It's
full
funny
circle.
how that thing came full circle, yeah.
Well, and for him too, right? I mean, he's now with a new company and...
a 10-year loop.
Yeah.
But even like, so, we're starting to work together on some stuff, and that's exactly when we kind of sat down. It was, it's the first thing we talked about was history.
Yeah.
That we had some history, and we were both, fans of kind of what the others had done. And
he's got so much, man. Like I had him on this show, and it was a long episode. It's probably like an hour 30, hour 40. And we didn't start talking about hard until like the last 10 minutes. Like there's just so much to go through with that dude.
Yeah, he's done a lot, man.
Yeah.
He's done a lot.
It's wild. So if the event started off a little slow, was there a moment when you felt like it really caught a spark, or was it more of a gradual build?
Yeah. I can tell you the exact moment was 8-Track. We got the 8-Track Infinity Tour, which I believe was end of January. So we had done about 6 shows that were okay. And I mean okay, and at that time, that room basically had like a massive capacity, like over 2,000 people, and we're doing like 800 to 1,000, which is absolute garbage in a room that big.
Right, and yeah, for anyone listening, that sounds like a lot of people, but in a space that big, it does not look like a lot of people.
Correct. So we got the 8-Track Infinity Tour. It was like an album he was touring off at the time, and it was like you couldn't move in there, sweat dripping from the ceiling. It was insane, and that was kind of the tipping point for us, where we're like, oh shit, this might actually work. This is what we were waiting for. This might actually go. This thing could do something.
Because what was happening, just to be totally honest, is that in the early days of booking it, that we did have some relationships with agents, but I don't think we were fully being taken seriously by a lot of the major agencies.
Which is a thing, right?
Yeah, it does take a second, because it's like, you're buying talent. So it's like who's spending and who's really a buyer and how much you're spending in the market. And
that agent, if it's going to send you out on tour, they better be putting you in the right room, especially in a market
or they're going
Los
to hear it
Angeles.
from the artist.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in LA too. It must be really hard to convince someone to take you seriously at the start.
Yeah, and so that's what I think when we had a string of shows where it was 8-Track, Mr. Oizo, and Rusko kind of happened close together.
All
And
when they were really popping.
yes,
Yeah.
and I think that was okay. I think the Control thing is serious. And then it became, instead of us, trying to, beat down the doors of all these different agencies and, please, can you give me your lowest level artist? We started getting emails from agents, saying like, hey, I just signed this act. Is this something you'd be interested in? Also, what's funny about that show, I don't know if you remember this, but I'd gone with Daniel from LA Riots over to Vanguard, and he had introduced me to Beth Fairs. And Beth came to the A-Track show, and Beth ended up becoming the Control booker for many, many years.
Wow.
And that I remember her saying that night that she's like, I think you guys have something here. And then we Giant came to Avalon, and we started working with Giant Promotions. And
how many years in was this? Is this like a year in?
This is probably like the second. Gary had left and gone to focus on hard full time, and he was doing like a big show at the Palladium or the what was the, I guess used to be the Shrine but wasn't the Shrine, I think, or maybe it was the Shrine. Yeah, it was still the Shrine. He was doing stuff downtown, and he didn't really have interest in doing a weekly at the time. He had bigger dreams and hope.
Right.
Yeah, so we wanted to find another booker at the time. He wanted to DJ, and I wanted to get into management a little bit more, and emailing the agent while asking them about your gigs for your clients was kind of a weird thing. And
Yeah.
then emailing.
As an emailing as the artist.
Yeah, that's
it's
tough too, right?
Yeah, thinking like, I'd love to be signed to this agency someday. I'd like them to know me as an artist, not as, the promoter for Avalon.
How did you navigate that?
I don't know if I did. I mean, like, if I'm honest, I'm not sure if I did. I think it was something that I always wrestled with, and it was so great of Jaso that I think, a few years in, we kind of just made the decision that, like, he was going to be more of the face, I guess, of Control, and I think you were the sacrificial lamb that way. I don't know if it's even something that you wanted, but it was interesting that I think that, I always wanted people to, I was spending, 80% of my life making art and sharing art and DJing. And I think I wanted people to know me for that.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I think all of my best education, my greatest relationships with different artists and agents and, people in the scene, they all came from Control. And so I think right around probably year 7 or 8, I kind of just accepted the whole thing that, like, I'm both.
Right.
And like, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I think as you grow older in this industry, and if you're lucky enough to stick around for a while, there is sort of that acceptance moment after a while where if something's working, why am I fighting it so bad?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I'll say that even year like 5 or 6, Jason and I would have conversations like, well, if Control goes away, or, if we're not open next week, and we had no idea it was going to last this long. We always felt that, like, we were kind of the small fish in the big pond of just all the things that were happening in electronic music and festivals. And
that must have been a weird moment for people in your position when electronic music really started blowing up and all that money started coming in, to be involved there. But if it were me, then I would start to worry that somebody with more money would just come in and try to, basically buy out my hard work after a certain point. I mean, did that happen? Did you have that worry?
I mean, it's tough to say because the competition in Los Angeles couldn't be any stiffer, right? And it always has been. And the rules seem to continue to change, and then we have to kind of reinvent ourselves year after year. I think that's what kind of we're resilient. We're kind of we're like the cockroach that you can't kill, I guess, now at this point. But I think we've continued to innovate and do things a different way, and kind of look at the landscape. And if everyone was going one way, we tried to go the other. And I think that's kind of what's kept us relevant and kept us ahead of the curve in a lot of instances, because we didn't ever conform to the norm. I mean, even from we made a point very early on to make flyers that reflected what the brand was about. Like we wanted the Control brand to be the forefront, not a DJ face.
Yeah.
And I think that gave the brand lasting power. That was a huge element to what we were doing, is that people gravitated to the Control brand.
Yeah, it's really smart.
Not just there's a DJ playing at Avalon on Friday night. So I think that's really been a huge part of what's kept this thing going and what's really kind of set us apart from other people in town. And listen, there's some great promotions in LA, and there's some great stuff going on all the time. But it's what is it? The imitation's the sincerest form of flattery. We do see stuff sometimes that's like, oh, that looks very familiar, or that I'm pretty sure that's the exact same lineup that we had here about 8 months ago. And that is what it is. It's a competitive landscape, and we just feel like we have to sharpen our tools every single week.
Sure.
Because we felt like we had cultivated an audience of people who they were open to hearing something new. That's what made us different.
You had that trust with your audience.
Yes. And so, and it happened so many times that these acts had come through and people would see them play, not even on the main stage, in the side room. And then those people would turn into these huge, superstar acts. And so I think that we always felt like how you would think, like, I'm going to outthink my competition, that we would out creative, our competition. And the fact that Jaso, he was so good with relationships and meeting the artists and their management and agents and really bonding with them, that we would get insider information of this agent just signed this act, or this manager just picked up this guy. And then me being on the road and touring with a lot of these acts, and then doing collaborations and working on music, that I would just get hip to stuff. DJs were just trading music all the time. So when it came time to book Control for whatever season, I would just hit my DJ homies and be like, what are you into right now? Valentino Khan texts me back. He's like, DJ Snake. He's like, this dude out of Paris is crazy. He's got this song called Bird Machine. He's like, just watch this guy. And so the first time DJ Snake even played in the country, he played for us.
Right.
Turntables.
No sunglasses,
He's still on turntables. Can you believe that?
That's crazy. I didn't know he was still doing that.
At festivals, it's wild.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I thought he made the switch.
Yeah.
No, you can see recent footage of him in front of 20,000 on turntables.
Man, him and Uzi.
I know,
man.
man.
And Craze, keeping it alive. In A-Track.
But you've had so many of those moments, right? Like the DJ Snake debut in LA. I mean, over the years, I feel like that's part of Control's legend, is that you've somehow managed to have either the debut or, the night so-and-so broke through, whatever it is. Those kind of moments, I mean, is there any planning for those moments? Can you anticipate those moments, or is that just something?
I mean, I could bullshit you and say yes, but I mean, you kind of have an idea when you first you're hopeful.
Yeah.
When that text comes through, and then you get it locked in, and you're hopeful that it's going to do what you think it's going to do, and then you don't really know until the pre-sales start to go, and you can we've been doing it so long, there's kind of an algorithm to the way this tickets sell. They start smashing. If we sell, half the room before the doors, it's gonna be insane, because we have a massive walk up just from being in Hollywood so long.
Yeah.
But no, there's no there's no Bill Nye the Science Guy to it. Or maybe there is a Bill Nye the Science Guy, because there's no actual real science.
Right.
Just a guy that does
maybe you're
science.
Bill Nye.
Yeah. But there's no real formula to it. I mean, there's shows that sometimes him and I are like, holy shit, did that really just happen with a $1,500 headliner? Wow, okay.
And what's funny is all these years, the way that we've kind of, we've looked at is that Jaso, having such a love for sports, he's like a stats guy. So when an artist would come along, he'd look at all the different stats and play counts and
you can
touring and
moneyball it a little bit.
Engagement. And I think me coming from music and the art space, I'm very much like a surfer in the water, where I don't really know, but I feel like a wave is coming, and I just feel the water, and maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's time to turn and start paddling.
Right.
Don't cut yourself short, because surfing's technically a sport, so you're kind of.
That's true. That's true.
It's very true. It's very true.
But I think a big portion, something that shouldn't be understated, and a lot of what we did, and a lot of the stuff that we booked. So many times people told us, you can't do that. So many times people said, don't do that. You don't want to book that. No.
You can't book dubstep in a room like Avalon. You can't book trap.
You're gonna put trap on Avalon? Like it was, if we listened, and I think it's like, most people would agree, is if you listen to people all the time, you can find no in anything. And I think him and I just got to a place where we trusted each other. If he believed in it, that was good enough for me. If I believed in it, that was good enough for him. And we would run stuff with that mentality. And, we didn't say like, fuck everyone else or not listen to any other advice. But for the most part, we trusted our instincts and we trusted each other. And that allowed us to build what we had without really having to, listen to outside influence. Because if we had, we wouldn't even be.
Of course.
We wouldn't have made it past year one.
Of course.
No one thought certain things would be able to work on a stage that big.
And over time, like on a long average, I think your batting average is pretty good, right? I would say you've had a lot more good nights than bad. At least
Definitely.
That's my outside perspective.
No, we definitely have. It's not like baseball. If you're a 300 hitter in promoting, you're not a promoter anymore.
Yeah.
You need to be way above the 600 mark, I would say. But you're on a weekly. You're never going to win every week. It's just,
of course.
I know it doesn't matter who you are. You're not winning every week. It's about winning more than you lose, for sure.
What are some of the if you had to name like the top 3, top 4, whatever comes to mind, like some of the most legendary nights you've had, either for someone who would go on to be big, or just for something that happened in the moment?
I mean, the number one night is I know I can speak for you on this one. The number one night was when we had Wolfgang Gardner headline, and I'll just tell the story. So Skrillex was a friend of ours, and he was doing some studio stuff. I had known him because we used to do the merch for him when I was at Carpet Robot. We had a merchandise company. So we were doing merch for his band, and he was doing this. And then he left from First to Last and was doing this solo project called Sunny Sound, I think. And I'd hung out with him a bunch, and he didn't drive back then. So we'd meet up, and if he was in LA, he'd be like, let's go hang.
Right.
I don't drive.
AKA drive me around.
So we were doing shows. So I was like, he was doing these Interscope remixes, and he got Chris one. I was like, man, I want to get you a show at Control. And he's like, that'd be great, man. That's cool. Like, he wasn't signed or anything. And we had Wolfgang played. And I'm going to tell the story because whatever. So Wolfgang's agent was Lee Anderson. And Lee, I remember at the time, was like, nah, man, we're not putting a dubstep act on, but under Wolfgang. Like, it's not happening. Like,
they wanted to put another act that they had, with the agency.
Sure,
and we did. We ended up putting Harvard Bass on, which is from the same management company at the time. I was like, I really want to put this kid on, man. Like, can we make this happen? And Lee's like, fine. And so we went and talked to Adrian, who was managing Wolfgang, still is, and we got it done. And we had paid Skrillex $500, and the rest is history. We put nearly 4,000 people in that room throughout the night, and it was pure mania. And not to take anything away from Wolfgang, because Wolfgang was at the peak of his powers.
Yeah.
Wolfgang was definitely contributed to a large portion of those people. But that was one of those nights where we were like, oh my God. There's a photo of the stage from that night, and it's basically like, if you look close, it's like the who's who in dance music now, from DJs to managers to agents. Everyone was there to watch this dude. Sonny, I believe, got signed that following Monday. With Lee.
Yeah,
right.
So that week before the show, I was at Sonny's place, and he and I had a conversation about, he's like, what do you think I need to do now? I'm like, my music's definitely out there. I'm starting to get booked. Like, what do you think I need to do? And I'm like, you need an agent. Like, this is definitely the moment for an agent. He's like, who's dope? And I'm like, I kind of gave him some names of some agencies. So I think on whatever that was, Monday or Tuesday, I had a bunch of missed calls from him. And I'm like, oh, shit, did something happen?
Right.
And like, I hope it's not an emergency. And then I check my voicemail and it's him saying, I got signed to AIM only. He's like so excited. And
Such a cool story.
yeah. And by the agent that,
almost didn't let him on the show.
Yeah, and it's not. It wasn't Lee's fault. They were just trying to look after somebody else, like on the roster. But Lee saw him play and saw how the crowd reacted to him. Also, we had 4,500 people there that night, where the legal capacity of Avalon's like 1,500. So we don't do shows like that anymore.
Yeah.
But it was a moment.
Yeah, no, and it's more than a moment though, because that's maybe a place where you actually sort of had a hand in the history of dance music, right?
Yeah.
Something that would go on to last. I mean, Skrillex, he would have, I'm sure, been fine anyway.
Sure.
But
that was definitely a jump point for him, for sure.
Yeah.
I think he would even say that
you
was
affected the course of his career, you know?
Totally. Yeah, I remember his manager, Tim Smith, kind of like just shaking my hand at that show and being like, thank you so much for making this happen.
Yeah.
Because what's funny is I don't know if it was me or you, but one of us had a conversation with Sonny and we're like, so we have these shows coming up. We have Caspa, we have Wolfgang Gartner, we had Fisher Spooner, and we're like, which one? Because something that I did back in the early days is like all my DJ homies, I would say, this is what I have. What do you want to play on? Like, what are you excited to play on?
You're a good friend for that.
Well, no, but yes and no, because yes, I am, because I would love if somebody did that for me, but also I would think that if you were more hype on a show, that like you'd want to...
You'd push it more.
Yeah, you'd push it more if you were excited. And I remember him being like, Wolfgang Gartner, hands down. Like, if you can get me on the Wolfgang show, that would be insane. And like, so it was great that we were able to make that happen. And, I do think he would have been Skrillex no matter what, but it was just such a cool part of our story. And to have that house at that moment to, make that happen. I mean, it's like one of the proudest things for Jaso and I about Control is that particular moment.
Yeah,
that's for sure the number one show in my mind. That always will be. I don't know if that's going to be able to be topped.
Yeah, no, that's history, man.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So what's number two for you? I don't know if we've ever played this game.
I don't think we have either, because I think we always get stuck on one. One's just crazy. Two for me is probably Rusko, just because I was friends with Seb. I still do. He co-hosts a podcast with me now. And
this is Rusko's manager.
At the time. And he's like, let's do, he's like, you want to do Rusko? And I was like, talking to him, because Chris is a huge fan. I was like, should we do Rusko? And Chris is like, fuck yeah, we should do Rusko. I was like, all right.
Because we went to Miami a few months before, and I came back from Miami, and all my friends were like, what was dope? What did you see that was great? And I was like, I saw, this at Ultra, and then I went to these pool parties. But I saw this dude play to like 20 people at the Scion like outdoor beach party, and he smashed. Like, his stuff was so sick. He like brought out this bass player, and he had like a reggae MC.
Was it like Woo Boost? Was that the song?
Yeah, it was like half tempo. Like I didn't even know what dubstep was. I was like, it was like half tempo electro, and it was just insanely dope.
So.
And was this his debut for LA?
This is his first LA play too. Yeah, he had, and at the time, we were trying to like really work with Circle, which has since been merged with United.
UTA.
But Circle had all the bass acts, and they didn't really want to book bass acts in Control. We had some shows, but like it was harder for us to get some of their bigger bass acts. So we booked Rusko. And again, it was one of those blow the doors off the building type nights.
Yeah.
Couldn't move. It was like 3,000 people in the room. It was insane. And 12th Planet actually opened for him.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And we had, it was like mania, because the crowd was different than our typical crowd too, because all these bass heads had just come out of nowhere, and we didn't even know that. We didn't think we were going to even do 1,000 tickets, really, because we were like, this is so rad, and him and I loved it. We saw it in Miami together. We were like, is there this many kids that are going to buy a ticket to a dubstep show?
I mean, Rusko was revolutionary. People forget because of how established dubstep is now. I mean, there was no precedent for something like Rusko at the time.
No. Dude, he came out with the green goggles. Remember, he had like the green eyes, like and these like goggles that he wore, and it was like, what did he open to like wake the fuck up or something? I don't remember.
California Love.
California Love.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
And it was like nothing I'd never seen. And Seb was like, okay, we're gonna need more money next time. But yeah, it was. That's probably my second favorite.
I think so. That's probably there for me too. I think the third would be our anniversary with Dada Life. And
man,
there was
Which anniversary?
Fifth.
I think this is 5 year with Dada Life. Although there was another Dada Life show where what's rad about he and I. So for all these years, his birthday, we like let each other book like whatever we want. And his birthday, he always got fucked. His birthday, for whatever reason, it was like something that it was good, but maybe not something he was into. And whatever year that was, I remember you're like, we can book whatever you want. It's your birthday. What do you want to do? And I was like, can we get Dada Life? Because he was friends with Dada Life. He's like, all right, I'll ask the guys and see if I can get it done. Cool, we get Dada Life. I was like, what about Hardwell? And this is like Hardwell, like pre-DJ Mag Top 100. I think he just had the Show Me Love remix.
Right.
And I was just really into the stuff he was doing. So there's literally a flyer and it says Mr. White's birthday bash. And I'm holding a banana. And on the banana, it says Dada Life and Hardwell.
Wow.
And
just crazy to think
That's
that was.
so funny.
You know what else is gnarly about it is I'm pretty sure that was EDC weekend in Vegas.
I think
Year
it
one.
was.
It was
I think
year
it was.
one EDC when they moved to Vegas.
Oh, man.
So the Friday we had Dada Life and Hardwell, and both those guys, we were able to make it happen because the radius didn't extend. So we had those guys, and they went and played EDC the next day. But it was like, okay, your birthday is shreds this week.
That's amazing. I mean, how do you do this now, and how did you used to do this in terms of choosing who to book? Or how do you decide, like you were talking about, you look at all the stats and all that, and Chris, you were talking about, you just you talk to other DJs, you see what people are talking about, but really, what attracts you about an act?
I'm still stats guy. I'm still playing Moneyball with the Oakland A's, but I'm still trying to figure out, the stats have obviously changed from 10 years ago. Spotify didn't exist then.
Yeah.
And for us, it's like we look at a bunch of things. It's social media stats. Is there a good buzz? Is the engagement good on the social media? Does he have the play counts? Does he have, to some degree we pay attention to Spotify, but only like, is one of the cities in the top 5 Los Angeles? Because if it's not, it doesn't really matter. And then another big key factor for us is really like what he said is the virality of it. Like, are other people talking about this? Are all the DJs hyped on this dude? Because the DJs are never wrong. The other producers are never wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean? Those guys, if 5 other guys are saying this is the next dude, that's probably the next dude. Because those guys, they're so heavily immersed in it, and they're touring, and they're seeing it, they're seeing their records out live, and that was like a huge thing. That's kind of been like a thing for us to tap into.
And I think what's different now about us in our mid 30s versus us in our mid 20s is that the way that we actually set this up pretty early with the Control brand is that it's forever 21, meaning that like it's not forever 40, it's not forever 50, it's forever 21. So the fact that our event is 19 plus and it's predominantly 19 to mid 20-year-olds coming to the event, that it is still stuff that Jaso and I love, and it's stuff that we are choosing, but it's very much about our audience, and our audience changes. They grow out of Control, and then there's another audience, and there's people that are going to go to Control tonight that have never been there before, and maybe have never experienced music that way. They hear it on like their pill or their iPod headphones, but they haven't experienced it like that.
Right.
And so what's great about Control Forever is that we have...
you meant the Beats pill, right?
The Beats pill.
Yeah.
Not the actual...
I thought
Please make sure that I don't take a misstep there.
Sorry.
But so we've got Control Forever, and
That
a
was
lot
good
of
managing.
Yeah, right?
great managing. We have a lot of young people that work for us at Control Forever. So, a lot of what Control Forever is, it's a media company based around music. So we're around music all the time, and we have so many, young tastemakers. We feel like we have these rad kids that are around us all the time, and they put us on stuff. And
was that the seed of the thought to start Control Forever? Like, how did you guys come to where we're sitting right now?
I think it was a culmination of things. I think him and I both, like he said, we're a little older now. We're in our 30s, and Control is our baby, and we wanted to continue to build that brand, but build it in different ways. Again, going back to our philosophy has always been to kind of do things that other people weren't doing. And, we've done events in Orange County. We've taken the Control name to Orange County or Vegas or San Diego. And then we had a weekly in SF for 3 years. But I think for us, it was kind of, we wanted to do something different. And we wanted to, not different from everyone else, but different from what other promotion companies were doing. We really wanted to focus on, new media and, providing a different kind of value and tapping all the resources that we have from the years and years of doing this into, let's set up interviews. Let's talk to people about stuff. What interview questions did we hate when you were DJing? Like,
right.
What are the things that we didn't like? How do we provide value through this platform that we built? And, I think that was a huge thing for us, is we just kind of wanted to take our careers into a different direction while using the same brand and kind of just expounding.
Yeah. So Jaso and I, basically about a year and a half ago, Jaso and I had a dinner, and at that dinner, he was talking about management, and that, I was asking him about like how he was feeling about it. He was asking me about like the artist thing and like touring, and we just started a conversation about like what would the next 10 years of our life look like. And in that conversation, we were talking so much about like what it is that we loved about what we were doing, what it is that we didn't love. And I think we both realized one of the things that we really love is we love creating platforms for creative people. And we love that, like I said before about the Skrillex thing, that we had the house. We had the house for the ability for that to happen. So Control Forever, the nugget of the idea of it was, what if we did the same thing that we did at Control the Party, but we did that with writers, we did that with filmmakers, we did that with graphic artists, we did that with, fill in the creative blank. But we had a house where like those people could come and do the thing that they really love to do. And, we were able to help them along the process. I think that, Jaso being a talent manager, and just, I guess what I love in life is we want to help people. Really, that is where we both get off, is that it's like we helped this person, and we know that we were, we don't even need the credit, but we just know, when we go to bed at night, that we were instrumental in helping this person get from this place to this place. And we did it in a way that was like what we felt was cool, and like something that we could kind of stand behind.
Providing value is like a big element of that. Providing value to someone else's life through whatever medium it was that we were doing, whether it was promoting a show or playing a show in his case, or creating content that someone can relate to. I think that's kind of where we are now, is really doing stuff that we're keen on, and kind of this next chapter in our lives.
Yeah, and I think it's forward thinking too. You talked earlier about how you would always kind of be trying to see the horizon a little bit in terms of who you were booking, or in terms of, what music you were playing, any of that. And to me, it was really cool to see what you guys had built in that sense, because we've sort of focused on Control, the event, and the brand, but you guys have both worn many hats over the years, and I've always been impressed by your ability to sort of pivot into something new sort of before, like you were saying, people would tell you it's a bad idea to do it, and you wouldn't listen to them. And the ability to not only not listen to those people, but just to have that strength of vision, is something that I've found very impressive about what you guys have built. Is that something that comes naturally to you guys? Is it something you're able to, to sort of just realize that an idea has potential and act on it, as opposed to what I think most people do, which is like think about a good idea and then sort of keep doing what you're doing.
I think we're both, probably to a fault, we're both ultra committed people. I think that like that's...
So once you have the idea, it's just...
Yeah. Once we say that we're going over there, that like, you know, we're going to do whatever it is that we need to do to try and get there. And because I think whatever you're doing, even if you're an artist, that I think the life of being an entrepreneur is, it's mostly sacrifice. It's mostly, you know, doing the stuff that maybe isn't that rad. And it's just how he and I were built, is that, you know, I think it would almost be weird not to have it, you know?
I think we're always kind of trying to do new things and test out new stuff. And I think a big component of it is confidence, and like, we're never really afraid to fail. I think I don't want to speak for him, but I've always kind of, when I do something, I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to lose. I don't care. I'll scratch, bite, kick, whatever. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to make it work. And sometimes that takes, it's funny, I always tell him this, like, 5 years, if you can do anything for 5 years, you've made it.
Yes.
It's working at that point.
100%.
So it's like with the media company, we're about a year plus, a little over a year into this thing, and it's like, it's really starting to go. And now it's like, we keep growing this thing, and you start building that value and that trust with your consumer or the person reading the articles or listening to your pods. And for us, it's like, I think we kind of go into what the mentality is like, we're just not going to lose. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I just mean more along the lines of like, we're going to make this work.
We're committed. Yeah.
We're committed to it. And I think it's like going into it with a positive mindset that if we want it to happen, it will happen. And that's kind of how we've attacked everything that we've done together. And
I relate to that a lot.
Yeah.
That's...
I think when people go into things and they're half in it, or they're half out, or they're not really sure if it's going to work, or they're even having self-doubt, of course, we're going to have days where we're like, oh, shit, is this going to work? I know, you know what I mean? Like, you're going to have those days. But I think if you have less of those than the days where you're like, well, how do I make this work? Like, I think next week we've got like 8 interviews lined up in 1 week, and it's just like, we're just going to keep pounding the pavement and doing what we do. And like, you know, neither one of us finished college, but you know, we know what we're good at, and we play to our strengths. We play to each other's strengths, and it seems to be working for us the last 12 years.
Well, I mean, is that what keeps you here? What keeps you doing it? The excitement of those new ideas? Like, what's still fun for you? What's still exciting for you? You've been doing this for so long now.
For me, it's probably the same for him, is that it's uncharted territory. So once I feel like, I've never felt ever that I've mastered something, but once I feel like I understand it pretty well, I want to learn something else. I feel like what really drives me is growth. Like when I feel as though I'm growing, I'm happier. And so I think that this felt like a very natural progression of like, we know that like the soul of like trying to help other people get to where they're trying to go, that's always seemed to work for us. But you know, this is a very large idea and a very big venture, but it's completely foreign. And that's what's exciting about it, is that we do have the confidence that like we will figure that out, but we haven't been there yet. And you know, let's go do that.
I think what's so important and so exciting and kind of what drives both of us is the sense that every single day when we walk in this office, there's no chance in hell it's going to be the same as the day before. And that is such a key component to, I think, how both of our brains work. Is like, we need to be challenged with something new every day or we're going to get bored. And I think this, between doing a creative agency and the media company, we set ourselves up with a whole new set of challenges than the promotion thing or the management or the DJing thing. And it's so exciting. Every day to come to work, I don't feel like I'm going to work. I feel like I get to work with my friends on something that is just incredible. I get to do things that I never thought I'd be doing.
and this, for me, goes all the way back to that Keys and Crates tweet that I was talking about earlier, which is, 10 years in, you guys reinvented again, and you said it feels new. And, to me, that's living the dream. Like, how could it be better than that, to still be here 10 years later and be starting again, Yeah.
Like, amen.
It's impressive, man. I mean, for the people who don't know, maybe just very briefly talk about what you're doing with Control Forever. Like, to plug it for a minute.
Okay. So I'll plug. You can plug the creative agency.
Okay.
So Control Forever was kind of conceived as a media company. And, that sounds vague, but we really wanted to be the West Coast voice for music and culture, film, TV, you name it. And we felt like there's so much great stuff out there. There's Vice, there's Complex, there's Hypebeast, there's High Society. A lot of those felt very East Coast focused. And there's so many interesting stories to tell in the mecca of entertainment here in Los Angeles. And it's not to say that we won't talk about stories outside of here, but we felt like the lens or the voice was not being told here. I'm sure there is publications, but we really wanted to put our spin on it. We felt like us ourselves had a story to tell. So we have a host of podcasts. We have one, the podcast I do myself is called Neon Black, and I do it with Mike Catherwood, who is on Access Hollywood and Loveline. Well, he was on Loveline until they canceled it, but he's on Access Hollywood. And Shane Gilmore, our editor-in-chief, and we kind of talk about, we bring in managers and different industry vets and talk about music and what's going on, and kind of more of a topical show. He has a show called Creative Control where you talk to creatives on like the how-to. We also have another show.
Which I was on.
Which you were on that
which
show.
Was really fun, yeah.
We have another show called Live Forever with a girl. It's our resident girls that kind of talk with influencers and different people about health and wellness. And then we have a digital magazine portion of the site where we create our own artwork and we tell stories through that lens that I just spoke to. And then we do have a big component of what we're doing is a lot of video properties. So we have a show called Control Freak with Mike Catherwood where he goes out and he talks to people who believe the earth is flat. And we just did a 3-part series on ABN. We have a piece coming out where they went and talked to females who are Crips, along with male Crips as well, but it kind of wanted to speak to female members of the gang. And we just kind of, it's so fun because we're telling stories that we feel like aren't being told.
Yeah.
Or they're being told, but they're not the way we would want to tell them. So it's about a year in, and we're gaining steam every single month. The new subscribers and stuff. Check it out, controlforever.com. We are at Control Forever, and on Instagram. But that's the shameless plug.
Yeah, and so the other component, like what we had talked about with kind of the model of how it would work, is that we would grab all these creative people, and some of them would just contribute and add things to the content creation house that is Control Forever. And then some of those people we would hire, and half of your time would be spent making content for Control Forever, and then the other half of your time would be spent working for other brands and doing campaigns for different brands that the in-house creative agency would be working with. And so the name of that agency is the Cult Creatives. And so we work with product brands, tech companies, music acts, personal brands. It's very much the same sort of control soul, is that, if we like somebody and we like what their company is about or what they're about, we've got all the creatives in-house that can help them sort of fine-tune their brand and their voice and help them get to where they're trying to go.
You also make a very comfortable sweatshirt, I must say.
I hope it wasn't too small, though. I feel like we only had like a medium or a small.
I took the one that was maybe too big, but it's actually worked out great. Yeah.
Okay, it's your airport sweatshirt now,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. No, I wear it all the time. It's fantastic. Well, this has been great. Kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about was... as we've been talking, I just keep coming back to your guys' partnership and your relationship. And it seems very singular to me. Like as you guys were talking, I was trying to think if I could think of other similar partnerships that seem so symbiotic and kind of so perfect, and I couldn't really. And so, for you, Chris, like I also want to make sure I don't gloss over. I mean, while you were doing all these other things, you had a flourishing artist career. You were touring all around, releasing a lot of music, working with a fair amount of big name artists, all of that sort of thing. And you, Jaso, were managing him at the time and sort of working that career in parallel to the events you were doing with everyone else. What did you guys, in that time, what have you learned from each other?
I learned stuff about him every day. We know each other inside and out, I think, at this point, but we always joke like he's my business wife. I think we trust each other, and that's not to say like any business relationship you're going to have disagreements. We probably have like one like real argument, like strong argument a year, which is pretty great in a business relationship.
Yeah,
I'll take that. But really, I think with us is like we know where each other's lanes are. And if he comes into my lane, that's okay. Like I let him go there, and vice versa. If I kind of come into his lane, it's like, all right, well, I'm going to let him. Maybe he's got something that I don't. And I think we work so well with each other because there's so much. We're so alike, but we also have really interesting thoughts that work that I wouldn't have thought of on a daily basis, and vice versa. I think he'd attest to that.
Yeah, we're very similar in our taste and very different in our perspective, like in a really great way. So it's just like having an extra set of eyes. And I think, for me, like I've learned a lot from Jaso. I mean, many, many, many things. And I there's not enough time in this podcast to talk about all those things, but
that's part two.
I think that probably the one that stands out to me is what I said a little bit earlier about commitment. I think that so much of success, if I've learned anything, is just showing up and just being there. And I always tell the story about in the early days of my DJ career that Jaso was doing Cardboard Robot and managing me and working on the event. And I would have a show, and we'd be done with the show at 4 a.m. And I would drop him off at his house at 4:30 or 5 in the morning. And I'd go home and I'd sleep for like 8 hours. And I'd get up and I'd check my email, and he was already answering emails at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, how is this dude doing this? And it's like he's got this other gig, and he had to go to work. Right. And I think that like I've never known another person to almost blindly commit to certain things and go all the way in. Whatever it is that he's doing, he goes all the way in, and you almost have to like pull him out sometimes. But that commitment and just showing up, that was something that it always inspired me, because I think being an artist, it's like things would be shiny to me and I'd be like, maybe I want to go over here. Right. Maybe this seems pretty nice over here. Maybe I'll drop this thing and cruise over here.
Right.
And I think there's definitely something to be said about answering the phone when you don't want to answer the phone, chiming in on that email when it's not something you want to do, having the hard conversation when you don't want to, and getting up and showing up when you're tired.
Showing up is a great point. I think a lot of people, and not to get off on too crazy of a tangent, but I think a big portion, especially now with the way social media is, I think for up-and-coming producers or aspiring managers or agents or whatever it is, whoever's listening to your show, is like a big portion is, like he said, showing up, but also social media, like for all its merits, can be a terrible thing because people look at social media and they think, man, I'm not doing that. Shit, Kylie Jenner's making $900 million last year and she's 21 years old. I'll never do that. It's like, you gotta kind of not quit, but also put the blinders on and just worry about yourself.
Right.
And if you focus on your success, and I think what's made our partnership so great is like we just put our heads down and go to work every single day. And it, like you said, like same thing I admire in him. Like he's gonna be there. He's gonna show up. He's gonna stay up late to get the thing done, and we're gonna work our asses off. Because if I'm gonna lose the game, I'm going to lose the game on my terms. I'm going to lose the game and say like, well, You had to like beat the shit out of me. Both my eyes are swollen shut, and the guy's counting to 10. But all right,
right. One, to painfully extend that metaphor, it's your game, right?
It's our game.
You're not playing somebody else's game.
100%. And that's a big. And I think both of us, we don't want to lose, and we're gonna do whatever it is without like doing anything illegal or shitty or ruining someone else's life. We're gonna do whatever it is to win. And I think that's been such a huge component to the success in all of our ventures together, is that we just refuse to lose. And I know that probably sounds kind of cheesy or whatever, but in reality, I think most of the time when people fail, it's because they didn't believe in themselves.
Yeah.
And we've always kind of believed that we could do stuff even if other people thought it couldn't be done. And we've proved time and time again that it could be done.
Or they have the talent and they didn't show up. Right. I think that to bring this full circle, that I think the reason that Control has been here for 10 years, there is a component of luck. There's a component of what we did and what we know. But I think so much of it is that we just showed up every week. And the fact that
you didn't stop,
in
right?
In nightlife, it is very rare to have two guys that will show up every week very diligently and answer emails and answer calls and try to do good business with people. That is a rarity in nightlife in general, but definitely like in Hollywood nightlife. You have a lot of very interesting characters in that world, and I feel like we were successful just because we were there.
Yeah, consistency, right? Consistency is key.
Yes, sir.
And that's the truth for any business relationship you ever could have.
Yeah.
100%. That's a great way to end it, man. Is anything else, anything we didn't talk about, anything you want to get out there?
Did you plug the agency? You did.
Yeah. Did you plug Control Forever?
I plug Control Forever.
Okay. You plug your kids?
I didn't plug the kids.
Yeah, shout out to your kids.
Shout out to my little boys and my little girl.
The fact that you're doing all this with kids, man, that's...
He's doing all this with 3, dog.
Yeah.
3.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's 2 ways to look at that. I'm doing it for them. In a lot of ways.
How could you not be doing it,
right?
right?
I think they're a huge motivator in this phase of my life. Before it was like, I just want to win, I want to win, I want to win. Now it's like, I gotta win.
I love that, man. Well, this has been great. I'm glad we finally found a good time. Glad to be back in this beautiful office.
Thanks, Willy.
All right.
Thanks for having us, man.
Absolutely. Peace, guys. All right, that's the show. Shout out to Ryan and Chris. Shout out to Control Forever. Love you guys. Always a pleasure to link back up. To everybody out there listening, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Don't forget to subscribe to this show. Leave us a rating and a review on iTunes. Go follow the Back to Bangers Spotify playlist. The links to all of that are in the description of this episode. As always, you can hit me up. backtobackpod@gmail.com is the email address. Let me know what you think of the show. Let me know who you want to hear from. Let me know how your day's going. It's cool. We can just chat. You can also hit me up at Willy Joy or at backtobackpod on all social media. And that's it. Another one in the bag. Some major ones coming down the pipe in August. Stay tuned. Stay locked. I love everybody out there. For Back to Back, this is Willy Joy. Peace.